This is Extra Time presented by AT&T, 5G. Gonzalo Higuain, my one brother, is not here, but Calen Carr wearing the same shirt as me, making me feel comfortable and in the zone as well. No Andrew Wiebe, no Matt Doyle, which means you get the A-team. Michael Lahoud in the house alongside Calen and myself, David Gotze, to break down everything that's going on around MLS, US Soccer, Open Cup, Canadian Championship, and so much more. It's going to be an awesome show. Welcome to the AT&T 5G studios. We're, of course, going to talk about the historic signing by the Columbus Crew. Coming up in a bit, we'll talk about Matt Turner's farewell to the New England Revolution as he heads over to Arsenal and where his storybook career stands in terms of other North American soccer players. We'll preview the Open Cup and Canadian Championship games that are coming up. We'll talk about some other big rumors and transfers that potentially could be happening. And we'll talk about some huge performances this weekend because a full slate of MLS games was finally back. But for starters, how do you guys feel? How did I do? How was my Open?
I thought it was great. You know, a couple fumbles, I think the Gonzalo Higuain shout definitely won me over. Nah, I'm kidding. No fumbles. It was pure.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm more wondering what Wiebe and Doyle are up to because I feel like it takes a lot for them not to be on the show. So I'm like, Doyle is definitely somewhere on a beach, I'm guessing. Right?
I'm guessing golf course. That's my
golf course. Wiebe 100% is on the golf course.
Yeah,
Doyle,
Weebe's on the golf course.
That's a little too much activity for him. He normally likes, I think most of his vacation, he likes to stay parallel to the ground. He doesn't like to be standing at any moment if he can avoid it. So I'm hoping they're enjoying their vacation. I believe they're going as a joint vacation. My understanding is Doyle is acting as a babysitter over the course of the week plus for Weebe's kids, if you can believe it. That's exactly what's happening. They'll be back next week. We've got a huge interview coming up this show as well. We're going to have Jeremy Ebobisse on. We talked to Brandon Vasquez a few weeks ago. Feels like him and Ebobisse are the two sort of knocking on the door at the USMNT number 9. We really wanted to talk to both of them. They're both having incredible seasons in the Golden Boot race. So we'll talk to him coming up later on. And we've got a big interview already planned for Thursday. I believe Tim Bezbatchenko will be stopping by to talk about Cucho Hernandez, the record signing, as a bunch of people who have all spent $10 million at one time. I think we have a lot to bond over. So I'm excited for him to come into the show and for us to do that with Tim. Let's get right into it, though. Let's get into Week 15 and the best thing you saw. Let's start with you, Calen Carr. What caught your eye here now that we're back into a full round of MLS games?
Well, I would say there were some bangers this week. I wanted to give a shout out to Graham Susie turning in onto that left foot. Don't give him too much space. You back off him, he's going to smash it. But I'm going to go with Josef Martinez, another sort of comeback of sorts where he looks more engaged to me. He looks a little healthier after he got that knee cleaned up. He's moving well, and then I just love seeing him score goals. So him getting back, getting on the score sheet, felt like a big one for him, just to kind of nice little cutback from Araujo to kind of find him right there. And then I like the celebration more as like a not celebration again, which is one of my favorite moves from him. Just like, you knew this was coming. Miami made it a little bit easier for them. I think Mota got the red card, and after that it was kind of 30th minute. So just kind of lights out. But shout out to Josef for getting back on the score sheet, because for me this league is better when Josef is back scoring goals and leading the line for Atlanta. So good win for them.
It felt different, as you said, right? It felt like the first time we've seen all these pieces really together because Josef just wasn't himself before. And that opening goal, I thought that was the most telling celebration of just like the scream of emotion right at Araujo as Josef sort of wheels around off the finish. And Michael, we know how dangerous this team could be, but this started to feel like the first time where it's like, this is why all these guys got put together.
Well, so much expectation comes when you have big signings, and they're a team that's really dipped in the transfer market and really used every player acquisition mechanism you can in MLS, and they're building something. It's 2.0 of this Atlanta United franchise. 1.0 was very successful coming out of the gate. The Miguel Almirones, Josef Martinez feels like he's been there forever. Brad Guzan even. But when I look at this Atlanta team, they had losses from front to back. So Martinez being out with injury, Miles Robinson out. Those are massive pieces that you lose. You can't win a championship when you have injuries down the spine or when you have talismanic players, especially a young player like Miles Robinson on the rise, national team member, the timing of that injury, and then Josef Martinez as well. What I like about this team, though, was prior to not getting home wins, at home is where they've struggled quite a bit. Something we don't typically see from Atlanta United. Now there's an answer, and who steps up to answer the bell? Josef Martinez. That's the type of player, your DP, you want them to answer the bell. You want them to put the team on their back, and he did that this weekend.
You see that attack cruising. You mentioned the injuries. Calen, we get word this morning that they've signed a full-time goalkeeper in Raul Gudiño from Chivas, 26-year-old. He's got multiple Mexican caps, national team caps, and Juan Jose Porata from Tigres on loan. That one, a 24-year-old center back. Only about 20 starts in his Tigres career, which is obviously an elite team to try and break into. But it does feel like the recognition from Atlanta that they don't have enough without Brad Guzan, Miles Robinson, and Ozzy Alonso to get over the hill. And these are the moves that can maybe get them there.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at the way that they have been able to really withstand some of these injuries that Mike was talking about, just as far as getting really cut down, seemingly one injury after the next, but then still being able to get things going. And I think a part of that has been that front. I think they feel really good about that front 4 or 5, right? You got Araujo, Moreno, Martinez now back, Cisneros when he's in. They even have a nice, I think Dom Dwyer's been a good addition for them coming off the bench. But then it starts to, the questions are more in the back. And I think that center back position, they've got Franco and Campbell, but if you can add, maybe a higher end piece to come in at center back and then in net as well. Just I think having someone with that type of experience, it shows, I think, that they're actually still trying to push for the Eastern Conference. And I think other than NYCFC, I think, you look at the table, Philly's right up and around it, but the East seems
the Red Bulls are in second.
Shout out to the Red Bulls. Yeah, but it still feels like not an insurmountable mountain to climb if you're Atlanta. And I think they recognize that maybe with another piece or two, some health coming back, you find that form. That front 4, I think, is probably one of the top as far as danger men goes, people that can make a difference. And so I think that these moves sort of indicate that they're still pushing towards this back half.
Can they?
Well, yeah, I think they can. When I look at where they stand in the table, if you would have told them that, they're 19 points, 9th place right now, and we haven't even hit the midway point. Typically when teams in Major League Soccer, when you have injuries that go down the spine, when there's so much promise at the start of the season and it goes south, when you're now having to rely on young players, which is a good thing, MLS is becoming a league that promotes young players. We'll talk about that later. When everything that you start with then goes out the window and you're knocking at the door, one win this coming week, they're in the playoff spot. And you're getting players back, getting Josef Martinez back, a focused Josef Martinez, a hungry Josef Martinez, a healthy Josef Martinez. It's like getting a brand new player. It's like smashing the transfer market to get a striker. And Cisneros, a guy who's had to play up top and kind of make cameos, he's played on the wing. That's good. He's getting his feet wet. And I think it's only a matter of time till this entire group just gels and they slingshot up this Eastern Conference table.
A lot of Atlanta
missing in this one as well too. I think with the suspension for bumping the referee. So
yeah,
him coming back and seeing how he comes and fits with Josef and a rejuvenated Josef Martinez. I feel like that's something for them to look forward to as well.
He still has 2 more games as a part of that suspension because it happened before the international break, so they hadn't played after he picked that up. You mentioned young players. I loved seeing Caleb Wiley get the start at left back instead of a Mikey Ambrose or a more experienced piece, and the injuries are pretty strong, so he'll get his opportunity now in place of Andrew Gutman. It'll be exciting to see 2 big signings, though, made for them at center back, at goalkeeper, so a lot to watch out for Atlanta United as we roll forward. On the flip side for Inter Miami, they've been connected with Mario Gotze. He's now 30 years old. At PSV Eindhoven, I think he led the team in both goals/assists and big chances created in European competition. Champions League, Europa League. So he's not the guy who won a World Cup final anymore, but he's still super talented. It sounds like he might head back to the Bundesliga, but it shows you how high of esteem people still hold him in. Did anyone get excited when they saw Mario Gotze Inter Miami connections, or no?
I definitely did. I mean, whenever you have a world champion connected with Major League Soccer, that's a big thing, and I don't think he gets enough respect. I mean, this guy was on the cusp of winning a Champions League with Borussia Dortmund and then winning the World Cup only a year after that transfer to Bayern Munich. And I think going to Bayern, the expectation, FC Hollywood in Bavaria, it's a big responsibility you have to carry. And he was young when he went there, and it just didn't work out. But I think eventually I would love to see him getting that just sun-kissed babyface assassin presence of his in Major League Soccer. I still like watching him play.
I'm a little bit less keen on this. I just think in general, we've seen world champions like Matuidi come to Inter Miami and not find the same success. And I think there's a little bit of a recognition as well too now that potentially the guys that have been top players and have, this is no doubt about his quality, but maybe not had everything on their shoulders as far as the team success goes, hasn't, at least to this point, directly translated. Even when I look at Shaqiri so far this year, I think similar as far as a guy that's been on some of the biggest clubs in the world, but maybe hasn't been able to this point to really carry the weight of the expectations of lifting a club forward, which is still this position that Inter Miami is in. So I like some of the young players that they're playing, like Bryce Duke for me has been a really bit of a bright spot. So you would think that might take away from some of his development. I understand Miami is going to always be a club that's linked to big stars, and that's going to be a part of their profile, much like LA Galaxy, which is David Beckham's connection. That's just with his Rolodex, that's going to happen. But I'm not sure if Gotze is the guy that I would pick to step in after all of the ones that they've tried just recently that didn't work out. And now I kind of like that they've benched Higuain and gone with Campana and just taken a little bit of a different route. So this felt like when I saw that link to say, I know it's hard to quit, guys. I know it's hard to quit, but please, you got a good thing going right now. Maybe now might not be the time to try and dip back into that specific well.
I love the idea that everyone's like, Ariel Lassiter's playing well, Cam Duke, Mabiaka, internally, and then Mario Gotze's agent calls and everyone's like, but we could. What if we did? We will see what happens there. Lassiter, again, really good this weekend. He's been a revelation for them. Let's keep rolling on the big things we saw this weekend. And Michael, one of your former clubs, a really good result out in Philadelphia.
Well, FC Cincinnati, they are no longer Skyline Chili FC. They are back to being FC Cincinnati, and this has been a good start to the season for them. That would be an
incredible kit, by the way.
Well, which one?
Just
Red Star or
cheese?
Yeah. It just, there's certain things that are just on brand with cities, and Skyline Chili and Cincinnati were just meant for each other. But this FC Cincinnati team, I love what Pat Noonan has done. It's taken them a couple weeks early in the season, took a couple lumps, but when you're a team that's given up so many goals in years past, they stop the bleeding at the back and going with the back three and going that really 3-5-2 formation. It's kind of this evolution and revolution that comes back full circle. I remember in the early 2000s watching Major League Soccer, every team played a 3-5-2. Watching DC United when they won MLS Cup in 2004. Shout out to Aleko Eskandarian. He'll kill me if I don't give him a shout out from that team. But seeing a team do that now, like FC Cincinnati, allows you to play with two forwards. And Brandon Vasquez, I love this kid. I remember watching him when he was at Atlanta United, and it was only a matter of time. He had all the physical tools, and now he's putting it to good fruition. When you have service from wingbacks, as a striker, you get in front of the goal, you play between the posts, and he's putting himself in good positions, and he's finishing. He's becoming a consistent finisher. And with something called the World Cup around the corner, he's knocking at the door. And when you have a kid like that, when you're becoming consistent defensively, and you're also not afraid to go toe-to-toe with teams at the top of the Eastern Conference, there's just a feel-good feeling about this FC Cincinnati team.
without Lucho, to get Vasquez a goal, I thought was a huge moment in this game. And it felt like Philly scoring early almost took the pressure off for FC Cincinnati, and they started to play their soccer. And as you said, control play, control the game. Nwoboda has been maybe as big a signing as anyone in Major League Soccer as the DP, defensive midfielder for them, even doing it next to Medunjanin in this game, who's not a guy who's covering a ton of ground anymore in MLS because he never was to start with. Let me ask you this, though. Brenner, he gets to start alongside Vasquez. Is this salvageable for them, or is this sort of just playing things out?
I think it's probably playing things out. I like Badji, actually, and Vasquez together. Badji just has, he understands the league. He's an MLS veteran, and he's a guy that's going to, if he's not going to score, he's going to work for the team. What I did like about Brenner, though, the match before when they played against CF Montreal, he had a beautiful assist. His ability to not just, when he's on, his ability to not just score PKs, which he did quite a bit last year, but his ability to be that link, almost play like a second striker in the front two. When he's on, that can be very, very dangerous for opposing back lines. But I just think consistency for him and really just physicality against certain teams, I just think I like Badji and Vasquez. Put the two trees up there, let them work, and run things down.
Calen, ready to come through the screen on a Dominic Badji reference. His favorite player in MLS.
Yeah, man.
Calen,
But, I mean, if you look at just to add on to that, if you look at some of the moves that Cincinnati have made, Badji is one that I think has helped them. But then even in this one, you see them bringing back Ray Gaddis and Medunjanin, which was funny because to see them play against their old club. But just some of the MLS experience and good vets that have come into the team, I think have definitely helped them out. And this felt like a good, like a measuring stick in a way, because I think part of it was they've lifted out a bunch of the Philadelphia front office to bring over, and much was made around that sort of homecoming of sorts. But I thought it was a good test for them, and I thought for the most part they really lived up to it.
Yeah, it was a really good performance from them. The 1-1 draw, that means I believe Philly has drawn their last 8 matches in MLS play. So, Calen, that takes me to the other side of this. Are you worried about the Philadelphia Union?
Definitely not. I wouldn't be worried about Philly from the sense of the draws or their ability to grind out results. It's just we've been saying for a while, like, does Philly have another gear? Do they have something else in the locker to be able to really kind of push past this place that's got them on the third in the table? But can they push to challenge NYCFC for top spot in the East? And I still think there is a gap or a gulf as it goes to goal scoring and finding. They rely a lot on Gotze, who's been good to this point, but is more of a secondary option, you would think, and does a lot of other things to help the team. So kind of finding that sort of centerpiece to be able to really kind of push things was a question mark heading into the season. I think Carranza's been good, but it's not. I wouldn't say not as there's still a little bit of a gap between there and the sort of the top end strikers, I would say, that we've seen across the league.
7 of 8 they've drawn of their last 8. They won in Portland, so apologies for taking away those 2 points from the Philadelphia Union, which they want right now. But I agree with you, Calen, and I think more so than just the talent, to me the style is what stood out in this game of. With Ur in the starting lineup alongside Carranza, the two of them and Carranza, they just want to stretch the field long. No one wants to come in and pick up the ball and create. And so you look at the one hand, Michael, at just the pure goal scoring, but on the other is what we saw for the Red Bulls in the playoffs over the last, over the Jesse Marsch era of what is the second note that you can play to break a team down. And maybe it's Paxton Aronson and Quinn Sullivan and Jack McGlynn, who are all with the US U20s, who we'll talk about in a moment. But otherwise, it feels very one style.
Well, when you look at their combination up top, remember some of the best coaches I've ever had, they never put the same type of striker up top. I mean, Calen, you've played on really good teams in Major League Soccer, and even in the MLS Cups that you're a part of, oftentimes I saw you as the runner, and then runners like playing with a target player who, if you're going to run in behind, you need someone who can either flick the ball or hold the ball up. that was really remarkable what they were able to do with Pascal Shabilko and Sergio Santos in that Supporter Shield winning season, because the runner was neither of them. The runner was Brendan Aronson, almost playing like a false nine, almost playing like an attacking mid who runs forward. You always need balance in attack, and I think right now they're struggling with that. And in midfield, a lot of teams are trying to stretch them out. They play a diamond in the midfield, and you play a diamond to create numerical advantage in the middle of the park. Oftentimes, it's your best four midfielders, if you're playing a midfield four, are center midfielders. That's why you play a diamond. On the flip side of that, you're going to give up a lot of space out wide, and teams are starting to cue in on that, push them side to side, and then long switches create 2v1s on the outside, going 2v1 against outside backs. And when you have those windows of opportunity, you're going to get beat once or twice. So when I watched them play against the New England Revolution, New England battered them. And if it wasn't for the play of Andre Blake and the back line literally just bending and somehow not breaking, that game could have gotten ugly. But when you look at some of the results they've gotten not playing well, those points do add up at the end of the season, though. 1 point over, that's 7 points that you're adding up that could have been easily 0 points without a back line that's doing just enough and a goalkeeper that's a top MLS caliber goalkeeper.
We had Anders put together some of this rundown, and he put in, do they need another piece? On the one hand, you think Michael Uhre was that piece. On the flip side, they just got a lot of money for Brendan Aronson for a second time because of the sale to Leeds United. So could another piece be in store for Philadelphia? It's a good question. I also do think there's a chance it could be those young players, not even as a starter. Right, if you have those guys coming off the bench, that's that other note that maybe could change the game up. It'll be interesting to see. Let's go to the best thing I saw in Week 15, and shout out to Ben Wright for putting it in writing better than I would. And he does a great job covering Nashville SC, but all of MLS out of Tennessee. He wrote, before May 8th, Vancouver Whitecaps had won just one of their first 8 matches. Since then, they've won 7 of 10 in all comps. They've earned 16 points in 8 MLS matches, the most in the league, and it has been an incredible run. The Vanni Sartini magic is back on. They're currently sitting at 8th. They went from sitting at 14th in the Western Conference at the start of that stretch. Cavallini gets a goal early in this game, which really sets them up to play comfortably, to sort of sit off at times against Dallas. Diber Caicedo, an unbelievable free kick, and it feels like things have turned back around the way they did last year for Vancouver, and there are more, I think, reasons this year than just the pure vibes and energy of Vanni Sartini last year. And now Andres Kubas feels like he could be one of them. DP center mid. We saw the numbers coming in. He was one of the top pass completers in France, both in the first and second division over the last 2 years. He was one of the top ball winners as well. We saw that passing. We saw that quality. Almost scored a goal in this game. And it feels like this is real for Vancouver. That's repeatable. You know that can continue to happen, and not just, they're confident and they're feeling good and they're getting results on pure effort. It feels like the quality is there, which is super exciting for the Vancouver Whitecaps. They have a big game against York United coming up, I believe, tonight in the Canadian Championship. That would get them into a final. And, on June 21st, to be able to say we're already guaranteed at least playing in one final, I think would be a huge step to take pressure off the team and really allow them to just focus on making the playoff run. We do have a Vancouver fan who wants to rain on the parade a bit, or says we rain on the parade. Does anyone have anything positive they want to say about Vancouver before I read this email? I guess that's a no.
I actually do.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, I feel like I'm always playing devil's advocate, and it's a bad gene that I have. With this Vancouver team, I was a bit confused how they were setting up at the start of the season. Last season, they kept the same formation, this 3-4-3 with a lone striker up top. But now you're finally seeing Caicedo and Dahomey playing as really the two attacking mids and pseudo wingers in this formation. At times we've seen Caicedo play there, but Dahomey play left wing back, which boggles my mind because he was one of their leading assist getters and one of their top goal scorers from last year. And just that triumvirate between he, Ryan Gault, Brian White, the injury to him, definitely impacted this starting lineup. But now Cavallini, the confidence that he's gotten being a part of this Canadian national team that is going to the World Cup, he's bringing that sort of play. I mean, just the physicality. He brings an edge to this Vancouver attack that they haven't had. And Brian White's a totally different player. He's an out-and-out goal scorer, but he brings an edge where he can score you big goals in games and just physically compete and battle with some of the bigger defenders in Major League Soccer. So I think their front three is a very dangerous front three, especially away from home. In the dog days of summer, speed kills in this league. And then I loved how you talked about Kubas. I love his introduction. They need a bit of calm in that center of the midfield. They didn't have that. They're searching for Tybert, Berhalter, Youngworth was playing in there, and now I think they finally have their answer. So that's my spiel.
I don't disagree with you. I'm excited about what Kubas can bring. I also would say we're hearing, I think one of the quotes about Cucho Hernandez that I've heard is like he can make other players feel comfortable and better, and I think Kubas can do that for Baldissimo, for Tybert, for Gauld, for all those guys in the middle as well. Here's what Fraser said. He's not raining on the parade, to be clear. He's literally titled this email to the rain on my parade. That's us. We are the issue. Michael, you might be exempt because you're not hosting as often, but I'm going to rope you in for this. And he says, what will the Whitecaps have to do for any of you to give them even a little praise? Even when talking about their last win on After Dark, so I'm going to assume this is Charlie and Weeby's fault because they're not here. There was negativity. Since May, at the time, Caps are 7-2-1, including Canadian Championships, 2 losses, were away matches, and they're in a playoff spot as of now. They're not a contender, but are far from the wooden spoon some predicted. They've turned their season around and look like a playoff-bound team, though one with a few kinks to still iron out. I know it's a Canadian team, country north of you, but how about a little positivity? Just a little. Well, I didn't even have this email when I put you in my rundown as the best thing I saw, so I think I get a little credit about that. He then wanted us to talk about Ben Foster, the goalkeeper in England, who's currently looking for a move, which I think I'm less interested in. And he says that Instant Replay needs to hire a defender to counter out Charlie Davis's pro-attacking biases. So that's something for me to take up with the IR people. Signed off, an optimistic Canadian, which is an easier thing to be nowadays than it was a few years back. So thank you so much to Fraser for the email. Let's get into our big stories from the weekend, from the week. And let's start both in a game, but with a signing. Columbus drawing Charlotte FC 1-1, and they signed Cucho Hernandez as a DP. The transfer fee reportedly over $10 million per Tommy Scoops. 7th most expensive transfer in MLS history. Most expensive transfer in Columbus Crew history. He will be available when the summer transfer window opens, which is July 7th. I believe their first game is the following day, that weekend, against the Chicago Fire. So they have 3 more games to go. Calen, let's start with from what we saw this weekend to where Columbus stands. What does this signing mean? What are the Columbus Crew trying to solve and try and figure out?
I mean, it's a huge signing, not just because of the price. 'Cause I paid less attention to the price these days when we get into these conversations of the record signings, just because the profile of the players that MLS is going after now is much younger, and finding guys that, even when you look at the top list of the signings, not all of them have necessarily panned out to this point. But when you look at this one, I think this is a home run signing for them. You look at his profile, his ability, and then coming in as the number 9. I mean, I saw the name and I was like, where's this name from again? I went back and I was like, oh, I remember watching him score an insane goal against Arsenal. I was like, damn. So there's a lot to be excited about if you're a Crew fan to this point. And I think also it speaks a little bit to the Crew, some of the pressure actually that's on the Crew, and the fact that they have not been able to find their footing or form, and then have moved on from Josef Martinez, but then haven't really found an adequate replacement. I think Hurtado's done a good job in the moments that he stepped in, and good on him for taking his chance, but not necessarily going to push them into the place where they need to be, which is back up into the playoff field and looking towards trying to make a run at it. So a lot of pressure, I think, on Caleb Porter, Bezbachenko as well to get this signing right. But this looks like a really high ceiling, like Rui Diaz-esque level but not very low floor as far as that goes. So I was really, really encouraged or excited to watch this guy come into MLS, because he can score from, the ball getting out wide. He can score from getting in the box. He can score from distance. He's scrappy, pressures a lot. I was looking through some of his old highlights as well, and just like very active, very busy, can pressure, lead the line. And I am curious how he connects with Zelarayan. That's a question mark for me, because I feel like Zelarayan has been more of a do-it-yourself type player, but maybe hasn't had the piece yet that has been able to kind of really understand him or create a relationship. And then the other question mark is, at times, how are they going to get service? They have good wide play, but it's a little bit more individual, trying to make something happen, as opposed to what I've seen Cucho get, which is like good service in the box. Molino comes back. I think this was his first game back in almost a year.
Wow. I
So
forgot
maybe that
about
brings
Kevin
a little bit of
Molino.
an X factor. Yeah, maybe that brings a little bit of some unpredictability into the attack. But I think this is a huge piece for them.
You mentioned not focusing on the fee, and I think that's fair, because we're in a different stratosphere, and inflation happens and different things change. But to me, what does stand out is you talk about that pressure. Is I thought Zelarayan was going to be a unique move, similar to what Rooney was in DC, and what Montreal did with Drogba, right? Which wasn't, this is how we spend now. It was, this is one person to get us over the hump and for this one team, and then it comes back down. And so for them to go out and now break that record 3 years later, 2 years later, and make this move does create a sign of like intent from Columbus's ownership down, of not we wanted to win one time, not Zelarayan was a unicorn move that we could find. It was, this is the stratosphere we exist in now in Major League Soccer, which I think if I was a Crew fan, I'd be ecstatic about. And I think for all of us that like this league, to have another team in this conversation is really exciting. And Michael, wasn't something that I knew would be the reality for them going forward, because the rumors were Mauro Manotas, right? They were guys similar to Giassi Zardes, already in the MLS sphere, and this is more of a paradigm-shifting signing.
This one seems to have come out of left field, because this guy is a baller. He's the real deal. Let's look at some of the teams he's scored against. Calen, you mentioned the mighty Arsenal. Let's see. His debut, scored against Aston Villa. Let's crank it up a notch. Manchester City, good goal that he scored. And then let's go abroad even more. FC Barcelona, Real Madrid, Valencia. This guy has a knack for stepping up on the big stage and really putting teams that the expectation may not be there, or they're just not in a good space, or you might think, you know what, Seattle versus Columbus right now, Seattle's got them. And he can give that moment of brilliance that your team needs to give a shock result at home or away. And so for Columbus to turn things around, speaking of Lucas Zelarayan, he's out injured right now. Didn't show up in the game against Atlanta, was rested, and then goes to Armenia to travel and gets injured on international duty, out, I think, the next 3 to 5 weeks. So you need a response. You need a name, maybe not a massive name that's going to sell jerseys right away, but this guy's going to sell jerseys based on what he does on the field. And I think he's going to be a factor for this team and in this league, not just this year, but moving forward for years to come. What I love about him is, you talked about it, Calen, his versatility of where he can play. Columbus played a 3-5-2 in Zelarayan's absence. They played a 4-3-3, as we've seen them do, 4-2-3-1 in years past. But to show up to play a 3-5-2 at home against Charlotte, it made me just wonder if they're rolling out the carpet to test the runway for when Cucho comes in. Hurtado's been doing the business up top. Miguel Berry, started well, still a young striker. And I wonder what type of chemistry they're really going for up top. Do you just put he and Hurtado, go with the hot hand, and put he and Hurtado up top, put him as a second striker? Do you shift formations? Caleb Porter has a lot to figure out, but at least it's a good news and good thing for him that he has this player, and a player who can make a difference.
I know I mentioned the price tag doesn't matter, and I'm going to go back on that again, because when you do look at the list and you say, okay, maybe Barco or PD Martinez didn't have the effect that we expected when they came in. they were able to move them on because
Yeah.
of their age and being able to recoup a lot of those of that fee. So when you look at the age of Cucho being 23 years old, it seems like a signing too that he could come to MLS for a while. I think he would have been on this Colombian national team heading to the World Cup if they had qualified. But you think of his potential if he starts lighting it up in MLS. You get him for some years. Hopefully, you try and get a trophy or two out of that, and then see if you potentially move him on. So it feels like when I talked about the floor as well there, I think that's partly the reason why we're seeing some of these big money signings coming in is you're able to get these guys younger. And I was surprised to see him come to MLS at this point in his career, but because generally once you see somebody in the Premier League and finding success at that sort of scale, you don't see them come back, especially when you score goals against clubs that Lahoud mentioned. So, I mean, that makes him even more of an impressive signing to get him at this time in his career.
You're totally right. It's changed the risk. You look at Jefferson Soteldo, what we're talking about around Edison Flores right now. Like, there is less risk when you're in that market of the players already viewed this way around the world. And if it doesn't work for you, it could work for someone else. And this is where MLS, it feels like, has entered the world market at a level that it never had before, where you can make those moves and there's a little bit more fluidity to it if you need to. James Vilsick asks us, basically says, if Cucho hits in Columbus at a reasonable pace for a newcomer to this league, closer to Chicho Arango than Ake Loba, he puts in parentheses, did the crew have the tools around him to make a playoff run? And then he follows up and said, are those tools wasted if Caleb Porter continues on his tour of reputation destruction? I think that's a bit of a reference to the way Gyasi Zardes was sent out of this team, and it has been a frustration. And Calen, you've talked a bit about being in the locker room when you see your coach do that to someone. But now that this signing's made, can we talk about Columbus in an MLS Cup run conversation?
First of all, they're in 11th right now, but only 3 points out of the playoffs.
Because everyone is basically 3 points in or out of the playoffs.
They haven't made the playoffs last year, and it hasn't been guaranteed at this point. And I think this firmly pushes them into a solid playoff team. And you look at the rest of the lineup, and I think they've generally underperformed based on what their talent is on the team. And so then you add this piece, and Caleb Porter's comments, I think, about Gyasi, it put some negative slant, I would imagine, within the team. But a part of what he was saying was he wants a top striker, or he wanted a better striker. And now the pressure is to say, okay, you have it. Now you got to go out there and take us to what you promised us to do. So I think, he's going to have a really top level talent piece to do that. But that almost adds more pressure now to say that if this team doesn't get into the playoffs or is just sort of getting by in the playoffs, that's probably not enough at this point. I think there is some pressure on Porter with that new stadium and an ownership group that's willing to spend to really make sure that this turns good and not just isn't a one-off we had a great run in the playoffs and caught fire at the right time, but we have a consistent thing that we are getting results, and really this team should be a playoff team and competing near the top part of the Eastern Conference based on, I think, who's on the team. It just hasn't been able to get in. At times it's looked stagnant and slow and really plodding as far as the way they move the ball. And I think this is something that could energize the group and maybe push them on to getting closer to that.
A player, I love that word you use, energize the group. When I look at the team sheet week in and week out, and I don't know if my eyes are deceiving me, but I don't know why I see Darlington Nagbe as a defensive midfielder. Like, what? This guy's a baller. He scores highlight reel goals, and I think that middle of the park, getting the right, just getting it right tactically as well. Now you have a striker in Cucho, but I'd like to see Nagbe get a new lease on life and get the reins to move forward. I know the injury to Artur really deterred him from moving forward, and that's why he played that role. But it doesn't feel like he's gotten out of that mindset, and I don't know if that's him or Porter, instilling that. But when I watch some of their games, that's just a missing piece to this team to bring the old Darlington back, the Darlington that just wowed us with moments of brilliance and could take over a game. I think it's just been more methodical for a player like him. And, if they were to go to a 3-5-2 system, I'd love to see he and Zelarayan higher up the field and Archer as a 6. You need an anchor in there to allow the Nagbys of the world, the Zelarayans of the world to just express themselves. And now you potentially have 2 strikers to lead the line. So that's something that I've just been noticing over the last couple weeks.
Yeah, 6 injuries they had this weekend, including 5 starters, you could argue, and then Will Sands, who would have been the starter in place of Pedro Santos, you'd think, if that was the way it worked out. So, as you said, things have moved around a bit. They've got 3 more games until Hernandez is available to them. So can they start to figure out some things even without Zelarayan as that goes along? A lot of question marks, but a lot of excitement. This is a big moment for Columbus. And as I said, we'll have Tim Bezbachenko on coming up here on ETR on Thursday to talk a little bit about this signing, why, and what they did. I do want to give a shout out here for our 22 under 22 player of the weekend presented by Body Armor to the other side of this Columbus team that is continuing to spend as well. They were one of the teams that signed an MLS Next Pro player to an MLS deal and gave them minutes in their MLS game. So shout out to Jason Russell Rowe, Marilyn Terrapin, as well as TFC Academy guy who has killed it for them in MLS Next Pro. They signed him to the deal, get him on the field for the final 5 minutes of this game. Chris Donovan as well, from Philadelphia Union to now the Philadelphia Union, both of them under the age of 22. And this is the dog days of summer. This is when, with internationals and injuries and players being transferred in and out, that rosters can get stretched. And this is going to be the first year ever with MLS Next Pro to see how does this league now integrate itself and fill in those gaps. The players that have been getting time, whether it's a Matt Freese for Philadelphia who goes down and gets time but is on an MLS contract, or the flip side, these guys who have earned spots on the MLS rosters through their Next Pro. This is obviously new. It's a new league. And so I think it's really exciting to see that happen already. And when you talk about young players, let's take a second here to talk about the U20s. The U.S. U20s tying Canada 2-2 this weekend. They beat St. Kitts and Nevis, I believe, 10-0. Canada lost to Cuba in the game before 1-0. And Cade Cowell with the equalizer late in the game against Canada off the left wing. And we have a question from Marin Quake, who says, I guess it would be Marin Quake, right? That's probably what they're doing there, Calen?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that one caught me off guard. Sorry to the Bay Area. With Cade Cowell's success with the U20s, is he primed for a move to Europe? And if so, where would you like to see him land?
I mean, I think he'll be, as it relates to the Body Armor 22 under 22, I expect him to be top 5, I think, as far as talent goes. I think he's right in and around that. And I think the move to the coaching change in San Jose has actually helped him a lot, just as far as simplifying and giving him a role, because he was playing wing back at times. He was kind of being used off the bench often and was kind of being tugged and pulled around in a lot of different positions. And I think his best position is having that wing position and being able to use his pace. And we've seen him sometimes even being able to kind of like show a little bit more to his game, where it's not just about the pace, it's where he can kind of come in and connect a little bit. We saw the way Jordan Morris has evolved as a player, where he was able to really just come in and now look to play and go and tuck in and here and there and find a little bit more to his game as things have moved on. But just 18 years old, he would be a top prospect. I would say where he would go, I would say Germany would probably be the best place. And you just look at the way young Americans have developed over there, the way they play young players, the way that we've seen some of that young talent, especially young athletic talent coming from our domestic league, go over and find success, whether they're U.S. or Canadian. And I think Cowell would be a player that would fit that system. When is the right time? I could see him staying in MLS through this season. I like what's happening in San Jose as far as I know they had a bad result this weekend, but I like what they have, especially as you look at that attack, and I think he's a big piece of it. So getting consistent minutes, playing more an important role, looking towards the U20s, maybe after the U20 World Cup, that's when the price tag goes up. You see something like that happen. But I would say whether it's in the next 6 months, or I would say probably closer to a year and a half-ish, I could see before he turns 20. He's got to stay he's got a while on this list, 22 under 22. He's got some time left, which generally means that you're probably not going to be around too long, the way MLS is being scouted now, and him doing it at the international level, I think is really good from a player development standpoint. I think it's partly one of the reasons. I know there's always debate over who gets released for this. This one, obviously, with qualification is even more important because it goes into the Olympics, which has been something we don't want to talk about on
Get
the show.
over it, Calen.
But I think, in a way, it's really good from a player development standpoint, where I know he's being relied upon for his club team, but I think there is something different when you step in and you play with the national team and you are one of the more experienced guys to do it. I also understand why clubs are hesitant to do it, because, as we mentioned, you go through the list and you see Philadelphia right now, and we're saying, oh, they need a little bit more depth, but they've got some pretty important players on that U20 team with Sullivan and McGlynn and all these guys that could potentially have been helping them out during this tough part of the season. So, but yeah, Cade Cowell, big talent, and I think that move's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. But I'd like to see Germany. I think that makes the most sense.
Michael, before you dig into Cowell here, Donald Norman also tweeted at us. He said, I'm not as versed on MLS talent as others, but my goodness, to my eye, Talles Magno is a top 10, maybe higher prospect in league history. What does extra time fellas say? So along with Cade Cowell here, because Calen mentioned he's maybe a top 5 guy on this body armor 22 under 22 list when we get there at the end of the season. Do you think Cowell is a game breaker, unique player, a Brendan Aronson level, Gio Reyna level guy, and sort of where does Talles Magno land on that list for you as well?
In terms of Aronson and Reyna, I don't think Cowell is of that caliber yet. I think he could be. I mean, you can't teach the speed that he has. You can't teach the physicality. I mean, he looks like a man-child. He was born with just his physique. And now it's that mentality shift for him. Just the audacity to embarrass people with your speed. I think simplifying his game is going to be his best friend. When he first came into Major League Soccer, there was a ruthlessness about him, just to size someone up, kick it by them, and run, and just do it for 90 minutes. And I think shifting positions with young players, even veterans, it sometimes messes with your confidence, and sometimes you start overthinking it. Watching him at times last year towards the end of the season, watching him at times at the start of the season, and the difference between watching him now, the directness of his play, there's no second guessing. I think at times I saw him when he'd get in the final third, he'd do all the hard work, but wouldn't reward himself with making the right play. Now with the U20s, and the competition is going to only get higher for him playing in the U20 World Cup, potentially. I'm going to risk using the O word, Olympics. But that's the type of soccer that a kid like him needs to play. Keep it simple, play to your strengths, and I think he's at an organization, the San Jose Earthquakes, who are shifting towards playing young players. Another teammate of his, Nico Shakiris, you and I called his games with the academy team. We were both surprised that he was getting his debut one weekend with the first team and then at GA Cup. And I think that's a shift in really creating an environment that fosters a development for some of these young, talented players. And, for Talles Magno, my word, not only is he a talented player, but he's playing on one of the best teams in Major League Soccer. And that can only help when you look at that list that will be compiled by the end of the season. And sometimes oftentimes you have to have the individual talent and come up with moments of brilliance, but you also need to be on good teams that just help promote how good you are. So I think he's got it good on both terms.
You talk about the all-time list. You're going to think of an Alphonso Davies and a Tyler Adams. I think Miguel Almiron is probably a little too old. when he got here to be in this conversation, but a Diego Rossi, a Brian Rodriguez now as well. Barco obviously should have been, doesn't end up probably on that list. You think back a little further, probably Breck Shea, Mike McGee, Eddie Gavin, Eddie Johnson was one that one of you mentioned, I think, as we came into this. Freddie Adu, of course, has to be mentioned as well. Those are probably most of the guys you'd say that are the all-time prospects in MLS history. Does that feel fair?
That feels fair. I think some of the other guys, when I think of international young signings, like Diego Rossi, I think stands out to me. Even if you go deeper into the well, Fabian Castillo at FC Dallas, when and I remember in like 2011 he was like 18 or 19 coming into the league, and you're like, what is this? Just wingers that can just fly. So I think those two stand out to me as two other good comps of international guys that have come in.
Jefferson Savarino, when he originally came, also one of those young players. But I would agree with you, Michael, in that one, the impact he'll have on this NYCFC team, especially if Tati leaves, who also, Tati probably could be on this list as well, although it took him a couple of years to settle. But there's a chance that Tati's going to break some sort of record for a transfer, and that Talles is then going to break it right behind him whenever he leaves, because he feels like a next level prospect. Speaking of transfers and big moments, New England Revolution 2-1 win over Minnesota United this weekend. It was the send-off game for Matt Turner. He did not play, but it was his send-off game, a ceremony for him pre and post-game. Calen is steamed that Matt Turner wasn't on the field for this game. How could it be a send-off if you don't even play? Is that right, Calen?
No, I at first I was like, wait, what? I felt like I'd been sold, a lie, because I was actually here in Brooklyn, and I was at a pub, and I got him to put on the match, and he wasn't in it, and I was like, huh. I'm pretty sure I read like multiple articles about this and the hype leading up to it, but then I think, what sort of cooled me down later was, one, they got a good performance from the goalkeeper. And I think they look to be in very good hands there, and I think that's going to be a really good signing. And then, two, I think Turner came out afterwards and said that he kind of he's like, I didn't want to leave if my head wasn't in it, potentially. It kind of sounded as much like he's got his, I think his wife is pregnant and already in London, and just a lot going on. So I think the more I sort of thought about it, it would have been really nice to see him play, but I wouldn't put myself in the category of enraged. Although I think I did listen to MLS After Dark, and Andrew Wiebe was incensed. He was furious about this thing.
As someone who didn't show up for the show today, Andrew Wiebe upset that Matt Turner's not on the field as he closes this one out. So, Matt Turner started playing soccer in high school. We know the stories. Became the goalkeeper as a freshman in high school because of injuries. Walked on at Fairfield University. Was not the starter the first 2 years of his college soccer career.
Where is Fairfield University, Gotze?
It's in Fairfield, Connecticut. Go Stags.
Connecticut. Okay.
Go Stags. Yeah. America East, baby. That's where I live. I think maybe Mac. He then was undrafted, ends up on the Revs through tryouts. Backup goalkeeper Brad Friedel elevates him. He is now a record sale. He is going to one of the clubs in the world in Arsenal, even as much as they've struggled over the last few years, as Calen's group chat can easily tell you. So it had me thinking, where does the improbability of his career, that he wasn't really a soccer player until he was 14, that he had to walk on in college and was undrafted to now go to Arsenal, the heights that he's hitting, where does it stand in MLS, U.S. soccer, Canadian soccer careers and improbable careers? A few names popped out to me early on. I think Wando's obviously going to be high on this list always. Basically anyone that played with Calen growing up. Kai Kamara will probably be high on this list as well. Yeah. Should we go through the rest of that PDL team, Calen, or can we move on from there?
No, we're good. We're good.
And obviously Jay Demerit's one of the great stories that everyone will bring up. But to me, Jay Demerit was recruited to college soccer, right? And Wanda was at least drafted, even if it was in the late rounds. To go from undrafted walk-on to Arsenal feels like a next-level career arc. Where would you rank it? Who else sort of pops out to you guys?
Well, I'll put some names in the hats. I'm going to go way back in time. Gosh, some of the players like C.J. Brown, not a high draft pick, commanding presence in that Chicago Fire team of the 2000s. Davey Arnaud, assistant coach at Austin FC.
C.J. Brown.
Yeah.
Teammates and heroes. The fact that Lahoud would steal C.J. from me behind my back.
Yeah. Ah, jeez, I know. I'll give it back to you.
No, love it.
No, this is what Calen deserves.
Yeah, C.J. Brown, Davey Arnaud. I'm going that era. Davey Arnaud, gosh, from Nederland, Texas. When was the last time Nederland, Nacogdoches? Those two are just pumping talent out one by one every 30 years. But doesn't go, goes to school out in West Texas, then West Texas A&M, and is on a Kansas City team, becomes a captain in the league, finds his way on the U.S. national team, and did it through just sheer hard work. And a guy that we work with at Austin FC and talk to, when you talk to him about his career, he would often say, hey, I may have not been the most talented guy, but I knew I had to work for every inch and earn every inch, and played with a chip on his shoulder because of not feeling the respect of coming into the league and feeling that coming from the bottom. That Jersey song, was it Start from the Bottom, Now We're Here. So I'll put those two names.
Okay, I think those are great ones. Calen, now that you've disrespected all of Chicago Fire, does anyone else come to mind?
I would like to put an asterisk for goalkeepers, because it is a different category to me than for a field player. Like anybody who tried to step onto the field in high school for the first time.
No feet, can't kick a soccer ball.
That seems tricky. But I think there is something to goalkeepers, and you look at just the depth of the talent at that position. And I go through the list. I was trying to just right now go through the cheat sheet of list of guys that were really goalkeepers that kind of came out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. I know Tim Melia was a pool goalkeeper at a certain point in time, and was buried at Lahoud. Were you in Chivas when he was there?
Yeah. We were doing sprints together. That's the last time I saw Tim Melia.
Damn, they make goalkeepers do fitness. That's wild.
He's really fit. He's one of the hardest goalkeepers, hardest working teammates that I ever had. He one of the fittest guys.
Damn. Did Tim Howard start soccer later than most? I was trying to remember. Look back in time.
Maybe, but he was a phenom, right? He was starting for the Metro Stars. Yeah.
I have one for you guys.
Yeah.
So when I was in New York, I was friends with Jimmy Maurer, goalkeeper for FC Dallas, and he told me a story about a guy who is the reigning MLS Cup MVP, captain for NYCFC, Sean Johnson. So before the MLS Cup, before everything that happened getting to Chicago, Sean Johnson, I think, was either a third round or fourth round pick.
Yeah, I think it was the 41st pick.
Yep. And also before that, he didn't start, and I'm going to skew some of the details from its memory lane, but Jimmy was saying that Sean didn't really start playing soccer or goalkeeper, till later on in high school.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
You'd never know it.
Yeah. I was there with Sean when he got drafted, and he definitely had to wait his time, because at first it was John Bush was in goal, and then we had I didn't even want to go into it because we had Carlos de los Cobos. It's the whole story. Yeah. But yeah, Sean had to wait his time, and then I mean, now when you look at where he's at, pretty incredible. So I think goalkeepers always have a little bit more time, and I feel like for Turner getting to Arsenal at 27, I believe he is right now, but still feels like he has developed. He has levels to get to, and I think that's the exciting part of this piece a little bit, is that he's going to now be put into a situation where, yes, there's big concerns about regular playing time and how does that what's the implication for that over the next 6 months, which is huge for all of us, right? And for him more than anyone. But I think when you look at his development over a little bit of a longer period of time, you have to look and say that this is going to be a really good move for the way Arteta likes to play out of the back and how important that is and the exposure that he's going to get put into. Because we've kind of seen him max out in a way from his MLS. Yeah. I can't imagine how he could get any better. It's more of the challenge would be like keeping your level. Whereas here you feel like for a guy that started a little bit late, that there's something behind that on the other side. But when it comes to all-timers, unexpected, I'm still going with Wando because, I mean, this man was like not recruited, drafted. I've got a great story where I texted Wando, congratulations, he was drafted. He didn't even know he was drafted. He was Chico at the time.
He was watching the reserve
that's how we
draft.
were like logging on to like a random stream where they were just like writing the names down somehow, and it just kind of pops up. And that was in the supplemental draft, I believe.
Yeah, supplemental. That's what it was.
Yeah, so to go from that to the all-time goal scorer and MLS goal king is, I think that's going to be a tough one. Top the goat.
I think that's fair. We got a couple of shouts on Twitter about Clint Dempsey, and listen, and you guys are both proof of it. Any person who makes it to this level, the careers are, bizarre because the road doesn't exist. You're all paving the road yourself. So yeah, Clint Dempsey driving from Nacogdoches, Texas to train, great story. But he was highly recruited to Furman, which is a soccer powerhouse. He was the 3rd pick in the draft. He was a youth national team guy. It's a little different than what we're talking about with these guys. Shalry Joseph came up as well. I think that's a fair one. Chris Armas as well, another Chicago Fire guy. All of those are fair, but to come off the radar as far as Matt Turner did and potentially start for Arsenal would be a pretty huge swing and maybe be the goalkeeper for the U.S. men's national team. You said it. It feels like the Revs are in good hand. Barrero's looked good. Petrovic has looked very good. He looks similar to Matt Turner as a shot stopper. So New England gets the 2-1 win. They continue their really good form over the last 6 weeks. They've been one of the best teams in Major League Soccer. They continue to move up the Eastern Conference standings. Let's move out west. One of the best games of the weekend, Seattle drawing LAFC 1-1. That one on national TV to open things up for us on Saturday. And Michael, Steve Toronto came out of it and said it felt like a playoff game. It felt like there was so much talent across the field. And this is without Raul Ruiz-Diaz and without Yaimar on the field. No Kellen Acosta as well on the flip side. Chiellini's not even there yet. So there's still more talent to come. But this, as we've seen sort of with Seattle and LAFC over the last few years, this did feel like a preview of a Western Conference playoff game.
Absolutely. And this very well will not be the last time we see these two. For LAFC, just the audacity to go to Lumen Field. Most teams, when they go to Lumen Field, it's a matter of time till the first of 4 goals go in. LAFC, they took it to Seattle in the first half. And I think we're unfortunate not to get that first goal. But Seattle, and under Brian Schmetzer, what's just made them so successful during his tenure is they don't have to play their best soccer to get points, to get something out of games. Typically, towards the end of the season, they're peaking and just lights out. And for Seattle to get points at home after having a midweek match, it was more of a point earned for the Sounders than anything else. And for LAFC, Chicho Arango, my word, the goal he scored starts with him bodying, like weight room bodying. I mean, he is just playing like a man possessed in the last couple of weeks, but just bodies a 50-50 and just clinical finish in the back of the net. When you're a team like LAFC without, quotes, your best player in Carlos Vela, not really hitting stride just yet in the ways we've seen him hit in last year's injury issues, you need someone else to step up. And Chicho Arango, he's been one heck of a signing since last year.
He knows the transfer window's open. He's here in the stories as well, and he gets the big goal. It felt, again, like an answer to why Albert Rusnak was necessary. He won them CCL because it's just that another piece of depth, and with João Paulo out, he scores the goal in this one. He's one of the lead creators. It does feel like the Seattle team, they won without Morrison Roldan against Vancouver midweek, and now they do it without Yaimar and Ruiz-Diaz in this one. They're going to have to go for about a month without Ruiz-Diaz. They look capable of doing it. Calen, I think you texted me previous, and you said that we haven't talked about Carlos Vela enough, and you're really upset about it. Do you want a platform now to talk about Carlos Vela? Was that what you were saying?
Gosh, you're always putting words in my mouth. No, but I did see the post game interview with him where they're asking about his contract, and that's definitely going to be the biggest story this week. I think across the league, because how long till like what we have?
I think we have 8
month?
days.
8 days. Okay, so go ahead. MLSsoccer.com. Put a countdown clock. Up
That's hilarious.
But yeah, I mean, it's huge because it seems like he was saying, "I'm very happy here." All the right things. I'm very happy here. I'm focused. We have a very good team. I think they recognize that. I think he's happiest in LA. I think he doesn't really want to leave, but he's also, I think he sort of cleverly put in, but this is a business, as you know, and we'll see how this goes, and kind of left a little bit out there to linger as it comes down to this final week. And LAFC have proven, I think, in the past to be tough negotiators. Like, they're not going to go easy, even to the point where they might lose a player, like we saw Walker Zimmerman leave. And I think it's coming down to a pretty interesting standoff, at least from the outside. I have no inside information into this, obviously, but just to say that, like, I think both sides want to get a deal done. I don't think Carlos Vela wants to leave LA. I think he loves it there. I don't think it's a situation where he wants out. He seems even to say around Cherundolo and being excited about the new manager coming in and a little bit of a fresh start and a clean slate. And I don't think LAFC want him to go either, because I think if you're looking at right now, they're the favorites for really probably everything this year, from Supporter Shield to MLS Cup. It's not the same for me. I think that changes if Vela's gone. And I know he hasn't been at his best, and they have been very, very good to this point, which gives them a little bit of leverage. But it's turned into this interesting little game of chicken. I don't know what it actually comes down to, is like, what's the final sticking point? Is it length or duration? Because I would imagine as a player, from a player's perspective, you always want that kind of security. But I would say once this gets resolved, I feel like we'll see, and I think it will, we'll see the best of Vela again, because when I've seen him in the past, his happiness and his sort of feeling, the vibe, if it's good, he's like unstoppable. And if it's not, he's kind of, I don't know, I'm here, but I'm not too worried about it always. So, or my mind's elsewhere. And so I think maybe getting this resolved will actually unlock a piece of him. And I hope LAFC keep him, because I think they will too. I think they'd be crazy if they seem to be pushing their chips in on a title, even with Chiellini coming in, and a lot of the signings they brought in that are like designed, I think, essentially with Ilie and Acosta and these guys to like push for a title right now. And Vela is still, for me, the centerpiece.
It seems weird to bring Chiellini in and not keep him around, but you never know. It was his 100th career MLS appearance in Seattle. It was off the bench. It does feel like LAFC is good enough to win MLS Cup without him, but there's no guarantees, and they looked a lot better with him on the field than they did without him. He's always going to make your team better. So congrats to him on the 100th appearance. 2 more games until that contract is up on June 30th, and we got no idea what will happen then. Let's keep rolling through here, and let's shout out RSL. 2-0 win over the San Jose Earthquakes. And LD Amrabula on Twitter sent us a nice little screenshot here. And it says that RSL right now, they are on more points at this point of the season than the MLS Cup winning RSL squad in 2009 and the team that reached the CCL final the next year, who went 15-4-11 to finish second in the Supporters Shield race. It is their 3rd best start to a season after 32 points they earned in 2012 and 30 in 2010. So you're talking about a historic club in MLS history, albeit in 2009. It was an upset, so I wouldn't expect their points total to be super high. Michael, is it fair for RSL fans to be saying, 1, talk about us, and 2, have that belief that this team can do things like the Kyle Beckerman, Javi Morales, Alvaro Saborio squads were able to do?
Well, this is a completely different team in terms of their DNA. That title-winning team had experienced MLS players, and that diamond. And Calen, you remember this? It was so hard to play against that diamond. They could beat you death by 10,000 passes. They could hit you on the counter. Javi Morales could hit a set piece winning goal. They had Olave. They had so many things. What I like about this team is home Rio Tinto Stadium is becoming a fortress. They're very good at home. It's always been hard to play up in altitude. And now they're finding ways to get results on the road. I think of the result they got against a hot Montreal team that really kickstarted something. And I think they're a team that doesn't get talked about enough in terms of the respect in Major League Soccer yet. Now, if they can get through the dog days of summer, still in the upper echelon, then you can't ignore the obvious that they're for real. But I think so far so good. They epitomize their coach's personality. Pablo Mastroeni, his teams, the Colorado teams that he had, just 4-4-2, two banks of four, two strikers that are going to fight for everything, and even teams that he was successful in had that DNA, and he's instilling that in this team. I think Cordova and Bobby Wood, they have something really good going. Bobby Wood is always going to make runs in behind. I'd still like to see consistent finishing from him. I know sometimes when he gets wide open chances, doesn't always put him away, but I think Cordova and him, they have good balance in that front too.
It's a lot to be excited about. Savarino gets the goal. Is that little extra bit of quality to add to that style that they've been able to put together? And rumors are that they'll continue to be active in this transfer window. It's obviously year one under a new ownership group. They've shown their commitment already, bringing Cordova over on loan, bringing Anderson Julio back, bringing Jefferson Savarino back as well. So a ton to be excited about for RSL. You mentioned Montreal in there. They were hot. They are not hot anymore. They've lost at home. They've lost on the road. They've drawn games they should win. They've got a Canadian Championship game coming up against TFC tomorrow night. That is obviously a huge game, a semifinal against your rival. But, Michael, you were on the call for this one against Austin FC. Montreal up a man for most of the game, over half of it, because I think it was the 44th minute on the red card to Danny Pereira, and they lose 1-0 at home. What do you make of where Montreal sort of stands right now and how they've sort of staggered without Georgi Mihailovic?
Yeah, they need Georgie back ASAP. He brings that extra bit of quality in the final third that they were lacking in the game against Austin FC. And the difference in that game were between two players, three. I would say Maxi Ruti getting on the score sheet, but also that battle between Brad Stuver and Kai Kamara. My guy Kai, one of the most another player who I don't think gets enough respect in the league, again, for what he's done in terms of goal scoring. He was off on the night. Some of the misses that he had, just uncharacteristic from Kai's point of view. You've seen him put those away in his sleep. And it shows the fact that no Mihailovic, Ramel Kyoto coming off the bench. I think in that match, the focus was more towards the Canadian Championship, the defending champions for the Canadian Championship, mind you. And I think once they get past the Canadian Championship, get Georgie healthy, then they can rethink a bit and get back in good form.
It's hopefully around the corner for Montreal. Kai, though, big miss in this one on a chance on the doorstep. You could feel the anguish through the TV on that miss for him, but a huge moment for Austin FC. Another big road win after the win at LAFC. Do you have a jumper on right now? Do you want to throw them around for all of us to wear? Because me and Calen are wearing matching shirts if you're not watching on YouTube, which you should be.
No, last time I said anything about Verde clothing, they lost.
Okay.
So I probably should keep that in the bag. The match against Montreal sets up a very mouthwatering match against FC Dallas. First time they're facing Dallas this season, and it comes at the right time for them. Dallas getting a surprise 2-0 loss at home, but FC Dallas have been very good on the road. Their home form have been hit or miss, but on the road they're a very dangerous team. They've gone to LA and embarrassed LA unexpectedly, and they have one of the best players in the league. And that tandem of Jesus Ferreira and Paul Arriola, it's going to be a very, very competitive match. For Austin FC, what I took from that game, it was a character-building performance. Last year, that was a game that I don't think they would have won. This year now, a man down, being on the road, maybe not playing some of your best soccer, they're finding ways to get points in difficult places to play. They did that against LAFC, and sometimes you don't need to connect 10,000 passes to get 3 points. And I think that adaptability that Josh Wolf and his staff are showing is just a positive thing for him.
It is a big moment for Austin FC. We hope that Michael Lahoud didn't curse them once again. But if he did, we'll bring him back on next week so that he can answer for it. Up to him. So with that puts a bow on our weekend. We still got some Open Cup to preview. But let's talk to San Jose Earthquake center forward, one of the Golden Boot leaders in Major League Soccer, one of the favorites of this show, Jeremy Ebobisse, for our AT&T Call to the Field. Jeremy, what's up, man?
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's going good. We're excited to be here with you. We're excited to be able to talk Golden Boot stuff with an American, but we will get to that in a little bit. Wanted to start with this weekend. You posted on social media. You were hosting an event with the BPC in Sacramento called the Cookout to celebrate Juneteenth. Tell us a little bit about what that event was.
Yeah, it was a great event. It was an opportunity for us to celebrate some of the work that's been done, celebrate alongside Sac Republic, who was a great partner in that, and really get together with the community to introduce kids, re-engage their interest in the game, and have some food, have a DJ out there, and really just make it a good environment that people wanted to be around. And it was a lot of fun. We had some players from the Roots, we had some former players there, and we had anywhere from a dozen to a few dozen kids showing up throughout the allotted time, and great to engage with them. We had Simone Charlie from Angel City as well. So one of the things that we were really excited about when we had the opportunity to build those mini pitches was activating the community, trying to do it on as much of a regular basis as possible. And pandemic challenges aside, the limited opportunities that we have had to activate them have been really rewarding. The community has been super, super embracing of the infrastructure and the sport, and it just motivates us to continue and to expand.
It's an interesting weekend as well, just when you think about it from the sports context. I mean, we've seen Juneteenth recognized nationally, and but when you think about the leagues that weren't playing, and then soccer is sort of space right now, and MLS playing and WSL playing, and this being the 2-year anniversary of you guys beginning BPC, were you able to take a minute sort of amongst all of this and the matches, of course, to kind of reflect on your journey so far in BPC and Black Women's Player Collective role in the sport?
It's always a challenge to reflect and frankly appreciate the amount of work that's been done, but it's something that we are trying to do. We did an MLS Cup. I think the Cookout was an opportunity to do so in a more limited capacity with the members that we were able to get out there. But yes, when we kind of look at the 2-year anniversary, the amount of work that's being done at a club level, but also with the league office and the communication that's been there, the intent to improve structures, be more open, not just to Black players and Black constituents within the community, but all other demographics that have been overlooked. It's special, and it's a culture change that we need to continue. It's not something that we want as a phase within the league. I think that when we started as an organization, people might have thought, this is just a heat of the moment thing. This is something that's going to fizzle out. But time and time again, we have proven both to ourselves, to our partners, and to the greater community that we're here to stay long term, and the work that we do will have an impact long term as well. So it's important to keep all that in mind as we stress ourselves out looking for more work, but it's been really rewarding so far.
It's important, I think, what you said of the work that's been done, especially the infrastructure that's been built in accessing the game for more people. Infrastructure can't go away. So that seems really important as we all reflect on so far what the BPC's been able to accomplish. And of course, you can go to their website to learn a little bit more about what they're doing at MLSsoccer.com as well as we go through this month of June. Let's take you on the field, though. Didn't get a goal this weekend, but that's been rare to say for you this season. 9 goals. You are the leader on the Golden Boot charts. I guess just big picture to start you off, what's changed? Like for you, was it just about opportunity, or has there things that you've changed or shifted your game to put yourself in this spot?
I guess that's a pretty open-ended question. So I'm gonna ask you to specify a little bit. Are you talking about within my time at San Jose, throughout, or just my career as a whole?
I guess I would say your career as a whole.
Yeah, I think the obvious thing is a consistent run up top has provided me more opportunities to find the back of the net, be closer to goal, and make the most out of those when they've come. Being out on the wing, sometimes it was really rewarding in the amount of work on the ball that I could get involved in. Just understanding, having a more refined awareness of space, just being with the ball in more dangerous areas that could kind of cause counterattacks and goals against. It gave me a different perspective. It also gave me the perspective of how to feed a striker who is goal hungry, because the strikers that we had were intent on those goals. They weren't just happy to be on the field. They wanted more. They understood the competition was tough. So not to take away from my time on the wing or kind of splitting between the positions, but allowing myself to grow into the striker position in San Jose. Last year was challenging with the timing of my injury, but this year, even starting the season relatively slow, not getting wins in the first few games, not getting too many shots on target in the first few games, but having that belief in oneself as well as our team that the goals were coming, there would be a regression back to, our talent level and where we should be. You just keep going and hope that you get into the right position, and that's kind of what's happened so far. There's going to be ups and downs throughout the year, but the guys, I would say the attacking unit has really taken on the responsibility of understanding different people's habits, how different people want to get goals, how different people want to unbalance defenses, and the more consistent we can get with that, the more opportunities it'll create for the striker, but also our attacking mids who have been getting amongst the goals lately too.
How much, and I've not played this position, so this might be obvious to everyone else, but how much of what you're talking about in terms of when you were on the wing feeding strikers and now that attacking group around you, how much of it is verbal that, hey, I want the ball shifting to my left, I want the ball through instead of to my feet, and how much of it is just time and playing together?
It depends who you're with. I've had teammates in the past who have told me, stop moving so much. Just stand in between the PK spot and the 6, and I promise you I will get you the ball at least once a game. And as a younger player at that time who is motivated to show everything that he at least thinks he can do, that's tough instruction to really allow to settle in. But ultimately it was fruitful, and what that really talks to is the trust that you have to have in your teammates. When they say they're going to do something, when they say they want to help the team, when they say they want to help you, which is ultimately also helping themselves, you have to believe in their ability to do so. And then kind of when you're coming into a new team, it is kind of having conversations off the field in the locker room about your general tendencies. But after that, it's just locking eyes and hoping that you end up reading spaces in the same way. And as a striker, you don't want to be too static in the box. You do have to create your own space. But sometimes that creates challenges for the person serving. If they're staring at you and you're making 50 different movements, where are they going to find you the ball? So what I like to tell some of the players playing with me is, if you tell me what space you like to cross it into or you like to play through balls into, I will make my way into that space at the right time. Don't worry about what I do before. We just have to trust each other to get to our spots.
You talk about movement as a striker, and I can't think of anyone better to have around than Wando, who I grew up playing with as now on the assistant side coaching. Is he somebody that you talk to about these things? I know you played together for a bit last season before your injury, but just having him now on the staff and his transition moving to the staff, is he somebody you work with? Do you guys study film? Do you talk similarly around movement in the box? And has he been able to help you in this transition phase of him, and then also, I guess, a new opportunity for you?
Yeah, we've definitely talked a lot. coming to San Jose, I knew that I would have that opportunity to work with one of the best to ever do it, especially when you talk about putting the ball in the back of the net. And transitioning kind of from his player to coaching role, he has taken on the leadership in showing the way for the attacking unit. So we are watching film with him, watching how defenders take up their shape and how we can exploit that. I don't think as players we've fully taken advantage of kind of all the information that we are getting. Sometimes the images paint a picture that we don't execute on, and that's something that we need to continue to refine, because to his credit and to the staff's credit, they are painting the picture that we are seeing in games. It's just about us and being able to leverage that. But yeah, even on the field, he's taking the attacking unit, he's putting us through pattern play, and it's all consistent with kind of the conversations that we used to have as players. The areas that we want our strikers ending up in, the areas that we want our wingers delivering from, our attacking mids delivering from. So definitely having him on the staff, who already has a really close relationship with a lot of the players, has created a better line of communication than anywhere I've ever been. And hopefully we can capitalize on that and start to get momentum, get some wins, because we've gone through games where we've scored multiple goals, and then we've gone through games where maybe we didn't concede any, but we also didn't score. So we need to put those two together in order to be a force in the West.
You mentioned the staff. Obviously, Alex Cavello new to many of us. What's it been like working under him? What has he sort of brought on top of the assistants that he's now put in charge?
Yeah, Alex is someone who's been around the Quakes for a really long time. He knows the players really well. Even if he didn't quite have that one-on-one relationship, he knows everyone's tendencies. He's someone who's really motivated and really detail-oriented. And so that motivation is infectious. The energy that he brings to training, you want to perform not only for yourselves, but just for the organization. And we've had some good results. So it has continued to reinstill the belief that we can compete in the West. So we're still a work in progress, which is not what you want to really be saying halfway through the year. We can be honest about that. You want to be kind of fine-tuning the extras, so to speak, so that you could be competing for the Shield and home playoff games. But I do believe that we're on the right track. I think that any team that plays us knows it's going to be a competitive game, and that's something that we had under Matthias, but that we've continued under Alex. So now, as I said, putting complete games where both on the attacking side and defensive side we're executing at 100% or close to, we can beat anyone in this league, home or away.
You are the top of the Golden Boot race. The other guys around you are also domestic players. Jesus Ferreira, Brandon Vasquez. That's never really happened before. I don't know if this is something you think about or are talking to people about, but this has been a foreign import attacking league. Golden Boots and MVPs have gone to players that have been brought into the United States and Canada. Does that ever cross your mind, or is it something that you're talking to people about?
Not particularly. What I will say is that domestic talent is here. We are as competitive as anyone else in this league. Sometimes players blossom at an older age. Sometimes you have your younger players like Jesus, like Cade, who can take the league by storm, when other domestic players might have been in college, right? But it's about earning the opportunity and then not letting go. I think some clubs maybe have been a little bit slower in rewarding those opportunities to players than others. But I think what we've also seen is that there are a number of players in each club that are either part of their academy setup or part of the super draft that have gone on and made massive impacts in their organizations, not just for 1 year, but over the long term. And I think it's a fundamental part of building any roster, just making sure that you maximize the talent that you have within your own setup while complementing them with players that you bring in from South America, Europe, wherever you're getting your players. And once you get that right balance, that's when you're fighting for championships.
100% agree with that. I mean, for me, when I look at even your career, I felt like you always scored goals when you came in for Portland. Would have liked to see more continuous play, especially at the 9. We've even seen Vasquez now making his move to Cincinnati, getting a kind of a new lease on life and more opportunities. And I think Dallas has always played young players. So for domestic players, I feel like they're sometimes being at some of the clubs that, I think everybody on paper would probably say, I want to all play for NYCFC, LAFC, and maybe Atlanta United. But then it really is about kind of finding that fit, it seems like, and you seem to be thriving in that. I did want to ask you, because you mentioned Cade Cowell, and we got the question from a fan earlier saying, what do we see from him and how high is his ceiling? And you work with him day in, so I figured no one better to ask than you. So what have you seen from his game right now, and what do you think his potential is?
Well, first, his potential is very high. I can't put a limit on it right now because he's 18. He's doing things that, again, a lot of domestic 18-year-olds would be hoping to do in college. But no, he's doing it against some of the best players in this league. So with the mentality that he has, the determination to get better, it's just really tough to put a ceiling on that. He's 18, so he definitely still has room to grow, which I think is really exciting because he's already shown to be a contributor both last year and this year, as well as across several different positions. So I think for him, it's also refining the things he does well and introducing a couple new elements to his game, which is scary to say, but will make him even more frightening. And I see him every day, so I know how hungry he is to work. I know when he's in a flow, I wouldn't want to put any defender against him. And so as his teammate, it's really important to me to continue to give him that confidence, continue to encourage him to take shots and to go at players, because oftentimes when you have veteran presence is in locker rooms, sometimes they want to take the responsibility, and rightfully so. They've proven that they can deliver, and so they want the ball, and you have to respect that. But you also don't want to oversimplify what a young player with potential can do. I don't want anyone in our locker room to take a Cade and tell him only run in behind and only take 2 touches. As soon as you get the ball, just cross it. And if it's not at the person, just yell. If it's not hitting the target, just yell at him. Like, that's not an environment conducive to his growth, but it's also not an environment conducive to our team winning, right? Like, if a couple guys who feel like they've shown what they can do hoard the chances, the opportunities, are disruptive to young players finding their feet, it's not productive. So I can't believe I'm calling myself a veteran, but as part of the veteran core here, and understanding that we have a lot of young players who are going through different moments in their careers and different growing pains and different successes, trials, we need to be there to support them through that, knowing that if they reciprocate that respect, that will make our team better off, and that will make them and their careers better off.
Most of what we've talked about with you has been on the field, though. For you, now entering your prime, scoring the goals you're scoring, have you changed the way you act in the locker room? Have you looked to be more of a leader? Is that something that you're conscious of, or is it just what comes naturally? Because it sounds like a lot of what you're talking about with Cade is probably things you saw as a young player from the other side, and now trying to build an environment that allows young players to come into.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of what I saw, but also young players talk all around the world. So some of the relationships I have with national team guys, youth national team guys in MLS and Europe, and understanding various respective roles in their locker rooms, it's kind of fueled my philosophy as I start to get older, hopefully as I maintain consistency to a point that young players come into the locker room and say, that's Jeremy, that's the striker, that's an intimidating presence. I hope that's not what they see, but I understand if that's what a homegrown might see. I understand if that's what a draft pick might see. And as long as they come in and don't have a big head, I'm not here to knock them down. I want to raise them up. And the fear deep inside is that maybe one of those people that you do raise up is going to take your position at some point. So it does create good competition within the locker room as well as just improve the general standard. And yes, that's a leader that I want to be. That's the leaders that San Jose has. It's frankly a lot of the leaders that Portland had as well. And you learn from who you're around. And I've been lucky to be around some good leaders.
So we mentioned you at the top of that Golden Boot race alongside Jesus Ferreira. He is the starting number 9 for the U.S. men's national team. You're scoring the goals, too, in MLS. Have you talked to Greg Berhalter recently? Have you thought about the national team through this international window?
I haven't talked to Greg. And I think throughout various phases in my career, I've definitely thought more or less about my potential involvement within the national team setup. I think right now I'm in a position where, yes, I'm scoring goals, but I also know that there's a lot more that I want to be adding. I think consistency over a 34-game season is my main priority. I spent 2018 on the back end kind of breaking through. I spent 2019 shuffling around different positions, started 2020 as a striker in great form, and then again shuffled through positions, even as I maintained that form in general. And then basically end of 2020 and 2021, I was in and out of injury. So my primary focus is to stay healthy, to maintain form, because it's been pretty elusive the last 18 months. And whatever comes of that, if I'm able to accomplish that, then I can assess that when that time comes. But right now I'm in a moment where it's most important to stay grounded, try to be as helpful to my teammates as I continue to grow into my own role, and see what happens from there.
I'm sure Quake's goal right now is just find their way into the playoffs and build your way up that Western Conference table. Have you set any individual goals? I mean, I guess maybe before the season, have you met some of where you'd expected to be at this point of the season? And then do you ever take a moment to reassess and maybe reset some new goals as you look towards that 34-game season?
The blessing and the curse of being a striker is that you're judged by your goals. And growing up, I always felt like I was someone that was more than goals, but I realized pretty quickly that that's all people are going to remember. That's all people are going to count. And even as we talk about the year this year, like there's been a lot of talk about how many goals I've put in, but maybe not as much talk as some of the other things that I've done or not done. So as an individual, as a striker, yes, I set a goal limit at, I'll just say 14 goals a year. And if I reach 14, then that's great. That doesn't mean I'm done. It means it's time to reassess. Maybe I wasn't giving myself enough credit. But at the end of the day, those goals need to be meaningful. And it's pretty demoralizing to come off the field knowing that either I scored a couple goals or our offense scored a ton of goals and we just couldn't get the result for whatever reason, right? We attack as a team, we defend as a team, but we didn't do the job. And while those are goals that go to my individual career statistics, they're not goals that put me where I want to be with the team, which is in the playoffs, which is competing for MLS Cup. And so it's a long way of saying I really care most about being a playoff team this year, because once we're in the playoffs, anything can happen. We saw Salt Lake's run last year. We know the way that San Jose does not give up ever, and just how dangerous we can be on the road if we have to be there. So being part of a successful team is the best way to look good, in my opinion, and that's why we need San Jose to continue to climb the charts.
Okay, but have you allowed yourself to think about Qatar at all? I mean, I know the number 9 position, it seems like there's still competition for places, whether that's from the start or whether that's in the rotation. But have you thought, does that add extra motivation for you as you look towards building your success with your club team?
I think anyone with ambition, no matter how unjustified or not it might be, looks at Qatar, looks at the opportunity to play in a World Cup. It's every child's dream. But being realistic, being present in the moment, I understand where I am in that picture. And like for me, the challenges have always been the second you start hoping for something more, expecting something more, that's when everything turns to crap on the field. Then you start distracting yourself. Then you start overthinking every opportunity that you get. Then you start wondering if people are watching you when you're being successful, and it just becomes toxic. And so if what I do today, what I do throughout the course of the year is enough for someone to bring me to Qatar, then great. But if it's not, then it's just on to the next moment, on to the next phase of my career, and going back from there.
Well, we're enjoying a lot of the moments we're getting in MLS right now from you. Hoping the results turn around for San Jose, but you continue to score the goals, and we'll have you on to celebrate a Golden Boot trophy at the end of the year. I know you guys don't care about it. For the players, it's all about teams. But for me, it would be pretty cool to see an American domestic player win that trophy, and you are right now the one leading that race. So it's been fun having you on. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for taking the time to join us.
We definitely care about it, but we care about things as a package. But yeah, no, great to be with you, and thanks for having me.
Thanks so much to Jeremy Ebobisse. Fingers crossed we'll see him on that USMNT roster when it comes out in September. If not, hopefully he keeps pouring them in for San Jose as we can continue to see a bunch of domestic players towards the top of the Golden Boot race. Not something we commonly say, but Mike McGee is sitting back with his MVP trophy, questioning me right now somewhere in Chicago, probably sipping on his own vodka, which is always a cool thing to be able to say. Let's get into the Open Cup. LA Galaxy hosting Sacramento Republic on Tuesday night, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. All these games available on ESPN+. 2 Canadian Championship games coming up on Wednesday night. We already mentioned it. Toronto, Montreal, and then Vancouver are hosting York United for a chance at the Canadian Championship final. And then we've got 3 games in Open Cup action, all coming up on Wednesday night. The biggest one, New York Red Bulls hosting NYCFC at Red Bull Arena at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Michael, we're talking about the top 2 teams in the Eastern Conference. We're talking about rivals. We're talking about 2 of the most distinct but clear identities on the field in Major League Soccer, and we could be talking about a potential future Eastern Conference playoff game. This is a knockout game, one-off at RBA. What's the difference makers for these 2 teams?
I think typically this point in Open Cup play, you start to find out what teams' priorities are. Which teams are focused on the Open Cup and those teams that do focus on the Open Cup and want to win it at all costs will put out the strongest teams. And teams that are more focused on the league will put out a mixed team. When you look at their schedules ahead to the weekend, both teams have pivotal games. Red Bull are going to LAFC in a marquee matchup, coastal matchup. NYCFC, though, play the Philadelphia Union. So I think that's the first thing you look at is which lineups do they put out. In terms of form, Red Bull getting a much-needed win, 2-0 win at home. And it came at the right time after a surprise loss that they had at Charlotte. This Red Bull team, the press, high press, has been part of their DNA for, it seems like forever now. And sometimes in the summer, especially when it's hot, it wears on you. And it's good to see them get back in the win column ahead of this game because they're going to need all the confidence against an NYCFC team that is getting hot at the right time. Didn't get the win, but they've been a team, really, I think the hottest team in Major League Soccer in the last 2 months since coming out of CONCACAF Champions League. So I really see this as a battle of who not just gets the first goal, but consecutive goals will win this game.
We had John Tolkien, otherwise known as JMI, on MLS Today for a long interview. We talked about this game. We talked about a lot of other things going on around the Red Bull. So go check that one out. If you have time, search MLS Today on Spotify or any of your podcast apps. We do that show every single day. That's why we call it MLS Today. Calen, in the pantheon for these teams, this is a time when they're both riding high. This is a big knockout game, a chance at a semifinal. How do you sort of expect the emotions and intensity of this game versus what we've seen, all time in the Hudson River Derby?
I mean, I love that it's in the Open Cup, right? Because it's the tournament with the most history, and we've seen, I think, to sort of write a chapter in this book for the New York teams will be big. I think for Cushing, it's a new manager as well at NYCFC, so I think can be very motivated to kind of, especially when it comes to the New York Derby, to put his name in the win column early, but. Red Bulls look good, and Luquinhas is in form. I mean, he's able to just find a moment of magic right now, which I think at certain points has been my main critique of New York Red Bull, is that who's going to be that kind of difference maker to find a special moment in a match. I think you could almost pick from a handful of those on NYCFC, who I do favor in this match, but Luquinhas in form right now, I think, is kind of maybe changing a little bit of the picture. And then how does Cushing handle it? Like, it seems from what I've seen that they have pretty much stuck to the same style. There hasn't been a lot of changes, but every time you play against this New York system and New York Red Bulls, you change the tactics a little bit and play a little bit more pragmatic, understanding that they're just going to be hounding you and being able to create turnovers, which they did really well with over the weekend. And that bit of chaos was part of what caused that Luquinhas goal, where they're able to kind of pick up that second ball, and he does really well to kind of put that away. But that's going to be the trouble area to watch out for if you're NYCFC.
Michael mentioned priorities. It's going to be an interesting one. NYCFC, they travel to Philly for a national TV game on Sunday. New York Red Bulls, they travel to LAFC for a national TV game on Sunday as well. So where will they commit that focus? Can they compete on both fronts? It's going to be fascinating. As Calen said, this is one of the best Red Bulls teams we've seen in a couple of years, and as you both mentioned, there's weapons galore under Nick Cushing as he gets his first opportunity as interim manager to take the Hudson River Derby challenge on. The other game on Wednesday night in Open Cup action, Kansas City hosting Union Omaha, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Children's Mercy Park. It is going to be fun. That is the last USL League One team left. We still have the Nashville-Orlando Open Cup series. That one will be next week. And, of course, a full weekend of MLS action that we'll get you previewed for coming up on Thursday, along with that interview with Tim Bezbachenko off the historic signing of Cucho Hernandez. So thank you all for listening to this one. Thank you for everyone who tweeted and emailed us to help us put together our show and hit a couple topics you like. Let us know. Do you think Matt Turner's the most improbable U.S. or North American soccer career arc, or were we wrong, as we usually are? And then you can tell us who was really right. Michael Lahoud, you're a legend for holding it down, especially with the 2007 Wake Forest National Championship poster in the background. Calen could never. Calen could never. And Calen, thank you so much. All right.
Yeah, man.
Now that I threw some college...
We should go somewhere. We got the same shirt. Would you go... I feel like we could go to lunch today. We should make this happen.
All right. Let's do it. Then maybe we'll suit up for an MLS team coming up later this week. Thank you all for listening. And have a great day, everyone.
Congratulations, you made it through more than an hour of extra time. That means you love the show, and if you love the show, you probably want more episodes. Click right here for more episodes of Extra Time, and here to subscribe to the MLS YouTube channel. Thanks for following along.